Guys, welcome back to another episode of the MFC Approach Podcast. Again, I'm your host, Luke Mattson, and I'm so excited to be here once again, guys. I have a guest on today who has been a mentor to me in this space as far as coaching, and I'm super grateful for his knowledge and abilities that he has shared with me, and look forward to him being able to share a lot of his knowledge with you guys today. So my guest today, guys, is Chaz Spackman. So Chaz, super happy to have you here, man.
Yeah, when you asked me a couple of weeks ago to come on, man, dude, I was stoked. First and foremost, I was stoked that you're still pushing the podcast. Like, I know when you first start a podcast, right? It's rough goings because it's hard to get reach and get it going. But
Yes.
like, how long have you been doing it now? Have you been at it for a while?
Yeah, it's been a little while. I think this episode will be about 15.
Nice.
So, from the time that, like Chaz was mentioning, guys, Chaz kind of helped me get this going and stuff. And so he helped me get it going before my twins were born. And then anyways, I'm gonna make excuses, which I shouldn't, but
I feel you. It's hard to stay consistent with, man.
It is, man.
I started podcasting back in like 2018 or 19 probably, and like I always found myself going through stretches for quite a while. Like I had a long stretch of like a year and a half where I did it very consistently. Then I moved and had to take a little bit of time off, and then I started going very consistently again. Then I had some health stuff come up and took like a year and a half off, and then I just got back into committing to it like back in October of this last year, where I'm back to putting out an episode a week. But I understand the grind. Podcasts are tough, but there's something about them that's like, as you like, we're coaches, right? And so like one thing I think about podcasts that I think is so just beneficial is that one, your clients that you're already working with can like get you in their ear if you get them listening to your podcast each week, which is so helpful to keep them on track and in a better mindset. And two, like people who are potentially looking for coaching with you, or not even looking for it, but just looking for more advice from you. Like if they ever get in a position to where they're potentially like ready to work with you inside of coaching, I love getting clients from podcasts because they understand the intricate details and the mindset and everything that you talk about on your shows, right? Like, you know that those people are in such a better place mentally to know what to expect moving forward, and they always become the best clients in the long run. So, like, there's a reason that I pushed you to do it back when we were doing some work together, right? And I'm happy to see that you're still doing it, man. I'm stoked for you.
I appreciate it, dude. I appreciate it. And I appreciate all that insight, because I agree. Just a little bit longer form of content for people to listen to. And I don't know, too. I think there's something to be said about just hearing somebody's voice and
for sure,
not just reading words and stuff. So anyways, man, I do appreciate all you've done for me in the past, and look forward today to just having you share your knowledge with everybody that's listening. So thanks again, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm like I said, I'm stoked to be here, dude.
Awesome. Well, Chaz, let's just start. I like to start from the beginning, and when I say the beginning, I like to just kind of start from the beginning of people's lives. Like, where were you born? How were you raised? What got you into fitness? And anyways, I'm gonna let you just kind of take it and share what you want to share, man.
Yeah. I'm originally from Preston. Luke and I are from the same hometown, Preston. He's a year older than I was. And in school, I graduated in 10 and you graduated in 09. But yeah, so I live in St. George now, like Southern Utah. We moved down here a few years ago, but like to take it back, growing up, I grew up in Preston, obviously small town. Like with that, there's a lot of good. There's some like, I don't like to talk crap on it, but just like small term thinking, small mindset thinking, like not abundance, I guess, scarcity approach. And so like growing up there, I had a great childhood. I come from a divorced parents. They got divorced when I was 8, and just was kind of split custody between them growing up. And so my mom's house, dad's house, always kind of back and forth. Grew up playing a lot of sports. My journey into coming into the fitness industry is pretty just like stereotypical. I feel like grew up playing sports, like kind of excelled at those, did really well, wasn't quite good enough to be able to take it to a collegiate level. And so when I went to college just for education, academics, out of school, like there was this void that was missing for me that was physical. Like
Yeah.
part of that I could still get out from, like I would use towards golf. I still play a lot of golf, like have always played golf consistently as well. But like that was good for my mind, but there was not a lot of like physicality to it, if that makes sense. And
Yeah,
so
for sure.
right out of high school, I just kind of got obsessed with the gym. Like one thing this found sounds like very vain, but like I always imagined, like tried to imagine myself when I was 30. I'm 32 now, but like when I was 18, 19, 20, like I always thought to myself for some reason, like I don't want to get to 30 and like regret and be fat and out of shape. Like it was just something that was always in the back of my mind. And I don't know why, but it was just there. And so like having that strong why or concern for myself, I
Yeah.
guess, because like I being young, like active, strong, like in good shape, could always do things, right? And so like I started to develop that fear, and like I was playing golf, so I had that competitive side of it, but like I just kind of fell in love with training and nutrition. Like even 18, 19 years old, like I was kind of just like a nerd, like geeked out on nutrition. Like, how can I optimize my nutrition in a way that like I'm not ever going to have to worry about like being overweight or getting so out of shape to where my health becomes like a detriment to me or a liability rather than an asset. And so,
Yeah.
and like I grew up with a mom, my mother was always like very into fitness. Like when we were young, I've talked about this on social media. She was a single mom. She had 3 jobs. She would teach classes at the gym 3 times a week. She would serve tables at night like 3 times a week. And then she had just a regular 9 to 5 job as well. And then taking care of us kids. She still always made time to exercise, like go to the gym or go for runs or whatever it was. Like as inconvenient or run down as she was, she still always made time to do that. And I always watched her like be mindful with her nutrition. Now, like looking back and having a lot of knowledge nutrition wise, like she's doing a lot of really stupid things when it came to her nutrition, as many do, like because there's so much random information out there.
Yeah.
But it was always a priority to her. And like I always watched that with her, and it was always a priority. And so like in a way, and with sports and everything that I had, like it felt natural to me, I guess, to prioritize those same things, right? Like it
Yeah.
wasn't weird or like extra hard work or an inconvenience to take care of yourself,
Yeah.
essentially. And so like I'm eternally grateful for her for setting that example. And the way that my brain works, like it just like resonated, right? It
Yeah.
just kind of became a part of who I was. So out of high school, like I said, I got into fitness pretty heavily, like started trying to learn a lot about nutrition. I did a lot of really stupid things in regards to like carb cycling or like trying to just eat like a whole food diet. Like didn't have like a basic understanding of calories in, calories out, protein intake, like the very basic nutritional numbers. So like I started restricting a lot of different things, like ended up in a bad relationship with food out of high school, like trying to learn how to get lean and like stay in good shape. Like, and I ended up in like some binging cycles with food, like didn't have a good relationship when it came to food, and like continued to dig and dig and dig and learn, and like found the science-based community.
Yeah.
And back when it was relatively small, like this is back in like 2011, 2012, like wasn't very big whatsoever. And once I found that and started taking those strategies and implementing them into my own training and my own nutrition, like my body transformed in 6 months faster than it did in 2 or 3 years of a shit ton of hard work. Right. And
Yeah.
it's like, wow, like this is a hell of a lot simpler than most people make it out to be. Now it's still hard to like change your habits, but I already had the habits in place. I just needed the strategies and structure and the evidence-based side to like put it into practice to create that result. So I got the result fast. And I was like, man, like this is awesome. And then I started seeing people online coaching, and I wanted to be a personal trainer. And I was living in Preston at the time and didn't really want to go become a personal trainer for the gym that was there in Preston. Like it was a fine gym, but like it just wasn't what I felt like the community could use with like
Yeah.
more top of the line type of equipment, I guess. So like, I'm just going to build my own gym. So as I was building my gym in Preston, that was when I essentially got my personal trainer certification, like 23 years old, maybe a little bit younger, older than that, somewhere around there anyway, but got my personal training certification as I was building the gym. Once I got the certification, I started going down to to Logan and training a few people that I knew and like getting some hands-on experience. And as we got the gym opened up, I started personal training in there. The gym was quite successful for a good amount of time. It still is today. I don't own it anymore. But as time went on, like, sorry, go ahead.
I love going in there. Every time I'm in Preston, I always go to the Fit Factory, man. And it's
like Idaho's treasure, like
job.
little small town to have like walk in with a bunch of like rogue equipment and like just good quality stuff. It's like, I always prided myself on that. I thought it was cool. And the guy that's taking it over now too has even updated the equipment even more and done a great job with it. And so it's been cool to see. But anyway, like started in the gym, like that started taking up all of my time. And I had a lot of entrepreneurial type of influences in my life. My grandfather was an entrepreneur. I worked for him in the gas station business for a long time and always wanted to be an entrepreneur, and like got into the gym and it was great, but it was like so small town based, right? There's a cap. Like we had a good clientele. Like I saw where revenues were at with everything. Like we were helping, I was personal training. It's all going really, really well. But like there was a cap there. And at the same time, I was posting on social medias and like kind of building a small following, nothing crazy or anything, but started to see like people were making full-time livings just working online, helping people doing the same stuff that I was doing in person. And long story short, like I hired a few mentors. I started working with some people and developing my social medias, and my coaching business just kind of started to slowly build over a 5, 6, 7 year span. And it just got to the point to where the coaching online eventually got bigger than what I was doing in the gym. And my family was kind of in need for a new environment. We were just ready to get out of the small town. So we moved to St. George. I sold the gym. And now 8 years later from starting the gym, we're just doing the online stuff fully. So I know that's super long, but that's my background.
Oh, dude, I love it though. There were so many good things in there. I'm going to try and pull a couple of things out to kind of touch on, but I appreciate you sharing all that. The thing that caught my attention though, Chaz, and I don't know. I typically work with, and this is kind of interesting because Chaz and I work with two very different demographics.
Yeah, we do.
I tend to train mostly, busy dads who have kids or are married and want to ditch the dad bod. And Chaz, you primarily work with women, and I don't know what I guess, is there more you would say to that, or just?
Yeah. So I think when it comes to coaching, like, and content, right? Like there's an importance to being strategic in regards to your messaging, right? Like, and I've talked to you about this as well, but like every piece of content that you put out should be able to relate to like that ideal type of person that you're trying to help. Now, that doesn't mean that's the only type of person that I help, right? Like I've got men that I work with. I've got different types of people, different types of ages. Like we kind of work with everybody, but who I make my like who I'm thinking of when I make my content most of the time, which is kind of ironic, is like my mom when I was younger and everything that she was struggling with in her nutrition, right? Like she was in a position to where like she was putting in all this effort with workouts, with nutrition, and like still kind of frustrated with the results. She was still in great shape, but she didn't kind of have like that shape and definition that she wanted, right? But like she's putting in all of this effort. And so for me, who I kind of like relay my content back to is somebody similar in her position, like typically like a middle-aged woman, like a mom, potentially like with some kids, or maybe she has like a full-time career or family, whatever it may be. And like she's putting in this effort and seeing some results, but like isn't optimizing things in a way to take her from like that beginner to intermediate stage to more of that intermediate to advanced stage. And so that's how I kind of frame it. And that's like my ideal type of client. Yes. But like I said, we kind of work with everybody, but that's who we target, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely. Yeah. I just wanted to touch on that a little bit. I also, just recently I picked up a new client who is a mom of 4 and is just ready to prioritize her health a little bit more. And so I'm honestly super excited about that because it is a little different than what I normally do. But I'm really excited to watch the transformation there and just see how things go for her. But the reason why I mentioned that though, Chaz, is because like I said, I do kind of target, dads who have the dad bod and want to ditch the dad bod. And I just thought it was so, I don't even know what the word I want to say is, but just like insightful, I guess, maybe, that at an early age, 18, 19, 20 years old, you had this clear image of in your head that you were not going to go there. Right.
Yeah.
And I think that nobody ever intends to, right? Like, I don't think I've ever met a single person who said, you know, like, yeah, I can't wait to get a dad bod. I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Right. Like, that's my goal. But it happens, dude. Like, it happens all the time. And so I guess I don't know, man. I'm just like thinking, I mean, I look at the example that you had in your mom, right? And how amazing of an example that is. And I think about all of the dads and the moms who unintentionally, you know, kind of go there. They kind of go to this place where they put on some extra pounds. They don't take care of their body. And it gets them to a point where they feel defeated, you know, and just feel like there's no hope really. And so I wanted to just touch on that, dude, because I think that we as parents, I mean, I know, Chaz, you're a parent as well. It's like we truly are laying the groundwork for our kids, you know, like we're truly setting an example that they're going to see. And most likely, I mean, they are their own individual, but will most likely follow because they see how beneficial it is to live a healthy lifestyle. And so I just wanted to touch on that, dude, because I think that was insightful. Like I said, at a relatively young age of 18 years old, you already like had that in your mind, you know? And so I appreciate you sharing that, dude. That was amazing.
Yeah. I think like one thing to touch on that as well, like just because you do it as a parent doesn't necessarily mean that all of your kids are going to adapt it either. Right.
Right.
But what it does is it does set an example and definitely increase the chances. Right. Like I have other siblings who it's not a top priority to them, or they didn't quite take it to heart as much as I did in certain circumstances. But it also like sets a good example from the get-go, and they're much more likely to pick up your habits than they are not to. So it just puts them in a position to potentially be more successful with it, which I feel like as a parent is like one of our main responsibilities, right? Your kids are picking up on everything that you are doing. So like the more good things that you can put in place, regardless if it's fitness or how you treat your spouse or your relationship with God or whatever it may be, like these are all things that if you're doing and trying to lead by example, it doesn't guarantee your kid to be the same way, but it increases the chances significantly.
Yeah, for sure, man. I love that you mentioned that too, because that's something I've posted about on social media before too. Like my top 3 reasons for taking care of my body is first, my relationship with God, second, my relationship with my wife, and third, my kids, right? I want to set that example. So, and I think just really quickly want to touch on not only like the fitness side of things, right? But it's like, what are you feeding your kids for dinner every day? Like what habits do you have around nutrition as well? Because I feel like those habits truly, like those are the ones that are going to have an even longer impact than, I mean, the workouts are great. And I always say that the fitness side of things is the sexy part of being healthy, you know, and like, that's what everybody thinks of, like, oh, I got to get back in the gym. When in reality, dude, it's like, well, maybe actually let's start with just focusing on what you're eating. Like, let's get a little bit more control there or whatever, build some better habits there. But, anyways, dude, I appreciate you sharing that. Okay. Well, anything else, dude, you want to share about who you are? I mean, that was, I feel like you covered it pretty good.
Yeah, I feel like
else?
that. No, not really, man. I think that pretty much covers all the bases in regards to that.
Okay. Cool, man. Well, there's a couple of things then, Chaz, that I kind of want to pick your brain about. And the first one is just like, as a trainer or a coach now for 8 years, is that the
8 or 9?
8 or 9 years?
Yeah, it started in 15, 14 or 15, somewhere right around there. So like 9-ish years probably at this point.
Cool. I guess just what are some of the most valuable lessons that you have learned from being a coach or choosing this as your career path? Like,
yeah, that's a good question. I think this will especially be helpful maybe for other coaches that are listening, as well as people that are just looking to get into better shape as well. But like, I think that we get so caught up as coaches as well in like the science of training and nutrition, right? Like it's so important to be educated and knowledgeable in that aspect. But like at the end of the day, the science and the research and everything, like it's pretty simple. There are new sexy things come out that show up on social media all the time. Like right now, like especially like for hypertrophy purposes, like training from a lengthened position as opposed to a shortened position. Like you're seeing all this kind of stuff come out that there's use in it, but like the basics, progressive overload, like controlling your training volume, like that's going to be dependent upon you and how your body responds and your nervous system and recovery abilities, as well as like nutrition wise, your caloric intakes, your protein intakes. Like there's a lot of very simple stuff at the end of the day that our foundations are laid upon. And then there's some sexy stuff that doesn't matter as much, that gets like just overly put too much into, in my opinion, and people can go down those rabbit holes as coaches. And what I've found, like luckily enough to be doing this for almost a decade at this point, like as a coach or like somebody just wanting to get into better shape, like it's so much more about the psychology side of things. If I could go back to college, I wouldn't go back and get an exercise or nutrition degree because I don't even have one. Like the coaches that work for me have them, but I don't necessarily have one myself. Like I was all self-taught and like through research and mentorship and experience and things like that. But if I could go back and get a degree right now, what I would get a degree in is psychology, so that I could be the best coach in training and nutrition that I could be, right? And because at the end of the day, like when it comes to this whole process, it's so much more about the voice inside of your head and like your limiting beliefs, what you're telling yourself, and like the mindset that you're choosing to have as you go into the process, right? Because like 9 out of 10 times when we bring clients in and we're working with them, like it's motivating at first for them and exciting, right? Like, oh, I'm going to be right on point. I'm going to completely change my life. Like I'm going to dial in my nutrition. I'm going to get in all my workouts. Like this is going to be great. And I'm going to see progress really, really fast. But for the vast majority, like you work with a lot of dads. I work with a lot of parents. I'm sure you work with dads. Like they obviously have careers, they have kids, they have wives, on the vice versa with me, with a lot of moms and things like that, have careers or families, whatever it may be. Like you're not going to be perfect through this process of trying to create change or be in good shape. I'm a coach. Like I help other people with this stuff and I prioritize it for my own body and my own life as well. I am not perfect ever. I mess up. I miss training sessions. I eat things that I probably shouldn't all the time. It happens to me every single month after month after month. But what people don't understand is that those who are successful mess up just like those who end up failing on this process in the long run. But those who are successful are those that look at their process from more of a persistence is greater than perfection mindset, right? Meaning understanding before you even get started that you are not going to be perfect. You're going to mess up. You're going to eat shit that you probably shouldn't have. You're going to miss training sessions. Life's going to get in the way. You're going to go on vacations. Like you're going to have all this stuff that comes up that stops you from being able to be right on track. But if you can get into a mental frame of mind with yourself to accept the failures before they even happen, but also make an agreement with yourself that you're going to continue to persist and put forth good actions or give good effort in the next choice, regardless of what happened in the previous choice, that's what leads to success long term. And that's much more psychological than it is about how many calories should I be eating, how many days a week should I be working out, like all these little things that they do matter, but they don't matter near as much as setting yourself up in a mental frame of mind that's going to lead to that long-term success. So long story short, like that's always my biggest takeaway whenever I'm talking with somebody, or like I had 3 client call or not client calls, sales calls this morning with people who are signing up with us. And like, they always want to get so nitty gritty detail about, I don't know if I'm eating the right amount of calories. I don't know like what workouts I should be doing. Like, yeah, that stuff matters, but like, where are you at mentally right now? Like, what are your limiting beliefs with yourself, as well as like, what's your mindset? Are you an all or nothing type of person? Or are you like somebody who makes like very like excuses because like one little thing goes wrong, so now you can't do X, Y, and Z? Like I have clients say like, oh, well, my mom got sick last week. Well, what does that have to do with you? Like if your mom, you know what I mean? Like, so like just helping them build more self-awareness around themselves, and then kind of molding that into a more persistent mindset or long-term thinking, not so short-term, like I need to lose 30 pounds in the next 2 months, what do I need to eat? You know what I mean? Like, yeah,
Yeah.
you can do that, but if you don't do it in a sustainable way with the correct mindset, like you're going to lose that progress in the next 2 months after that and be back stuck in position A. So how do we start framing your mind in a way that's going to put you in a position that you can start achieving results long term? So 2-3 years down the road, you're not back in the same position, having to do it all over again.
Yeah, dude, man. I love that. I love that so much. And that's, Chaz, like, honestly, that's something I think that I took away from working with you the most was that mentality and that mindset. I mean, I see you post about it often too. And every time I see it, I'm just like, man, it's like, again, just so insightful. Because everybody's so focused on the end result. Right.
Yeah.
And I don't know, man, it's just,
they're just they're focused on the end result, but they're not focused on what people did to achieve that result.
Exactly.
They're focused on like the hardcore people who like get on social media and said, I did X, Y, and Z. And like, you know what I mean? And like stuck to it, and it's discipline and it's that. And like, yeah, you have to be disciplined. Yeah, you have to make sacrifices, but you also have to understand that you are going to mess up on those things because you're not a robot. And how do you bounce back? Because it's going to happen over and over again through the rest of your life. Yep. And so how do you bounce back, and where are your foundations, and what's your why behind doing it in the first place? And once you can dig in and get into that side of things, like, you become unstoppable.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I have a client that, I mean, when you said this, it just like came straight to my mind. But one time, I noticed that she didn't track for a while, like for a couple of days, like she wasn't tracking her calories. And when I had a chance to talk to her about it, she said, well, I mean, I just got really busy this one day, and I ended up eating like a pack of Sour Patch watermelons for lunch. And she's like, I felt guilty, and so I didn't track it. And then it just led to 2 or 3 more days after that as well, you know, of not tracking and just eating whatever she wanted. And so, I mean, I feel like that's just a really obvious example of what you were just kind of sharing, right? It's like, how do we respond to, I mean, I guess the failures we have, right? Because we fail at times, but the mistakes we make, how do we respond to those? And so it's been awesome though to see her change over time, and realizing like, okay, I might have messed up, but that's not going to affect me the rest of today. And it's not going to affect me for the next few days. Like, I'm going to realize what happened. I'm going to accept it and move on and continue to progress. So yeah, anyways,
it's a progression in that too, right?
Exactly.
Because at first, like, we can have these conversations with people, and like one meal can potentially lead to 2 to 3. And then maybe you have like 3 days that are just bad.
Yeah.
Right. What people do is they get so caught up in those 3 days and feel like they ruined all of their progress that they allow like to continue to cycle. Or if you can stop it after 3 days, like, instead of beating yourself up for the 3 days, let's just focus on what we can do moving forward. And then the next time this happens, maybe you catch it in 2 days. And then the next time it happens, maybe you catch it in 1 day. And then the next time it happens, maybe you catch it after that first meal. And you've built this progression in regards to how you respond to it by building more self-awareness and progress at getting better at being persistent. Right? Like, it's not like this even perfection inside of your persistence. Like, oh, I had one bad meal, right back on track. Like, it's not going to happen for most people because like, you've lived your life and your brain's like shaped in this way to this is how you respond. We have to focus on starting to improve that response. And that may come in slow steps as well. But as long as you're progressing that, well, now you're making better choices more often. Your body composition is going to start to progress in the long term because of that as well.
Yeah. Love it, man. Love it. Thanks so much for that insight and that sharing all that. Cause I agree, man. I think we all look at the big obvious things that need to, or the big sexy obvious things, you know, that might need to happen, but it's like, let's start a little bit smaller and start with our mindset first. So I love that, dude. So I guess kind of moving on from that, Chaz, like, where do you feel like the majority of people are falling short, you know, when it comes to their health?
Yeah, it's similar. Right. A lot of it's that they're focused on, just like I mentioned before, they're so focused on like the nitty gritty details of the science and like the principles, which are all very important. Like they matter. They absolutely matter. They have to be intact. But if you're not putting your mental state in a place and like focusing more on the mental side of things before you're focusing on the physical side of things, you're never going to see the physical transformation because the mental side isn't going to allow you to even get there. Gotcha. Right. And so like when it comes to falling short, like it's starting there and just like keeping it very simple and building that self-awareness and being more focused on that than you are focused on like, oh, are these calories perfect?
Gotcha. Cool, man. What are some of the biggest misconceptions that you have found, Chaz, that exist in the fitness and nutrition industry?
That's a good question. There's a ton of them. Especially for my demographic, like there's just, I can name off a million of them in regards to myth, but like one, like being strength training in regards, especially women, like they all of a sudden think if you start strength training, you're going to turn into like this professional style of bodybuilder, right? Which isn't the case whatsoever. There's a huge misconception around like carbohydrates, especially with women, like this knock on carbs. Like if you want to get in shape and get fit or lose body fat, like you need to take carbs out. But in reality, if you're strength training and like doing things appropriately on the exercise side of things, you need carbs to adequately fuel those types of training sessions in regards to what you're doing in order to be able to like keep energy and perform optimally and have your body perform optimally in your training to see better results in the long term from that as well. And so those are just two that come top of mind, but there's so many different types of misconceptions. What's one that you run into a lot that's different from those, and maybe we could touch on it? But
well, it's funny because I guess I'll touch on one that you just mentioned, but it's funny how often, dude, I even get a lot of guys who tell me like, I don't need to be like all jacked and shredded.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, okay, that's fine. Like, I totally get that. And chances are you probably won't ever get jacked and shredded because, I mean, I've gotten to a point where I can kind of talk about it and joke with people about it a little bit because it's like that's like my goal. Like I want to get as big and as jacked as I can, but, I mean, I've been doing it for 12 years and I'm still not where I thought I would be and want to be, you know? So anyways, it is a funny misconception.
I say that all the time. Like when people say that same thing to me, like, oh, I don't want to become like a bodybuilder or get like huge. It's like, I'm 30 years old, great hormonal levels, like have testosterone coming out of my eardrums, and I'm still not jacked and shredded. Like we got to take a realistic approach to this, right? Like at the end of the day, training does a lot of things for you, especially strength training. Like it helps your joints and your ligaments in regards to like strengthens your joints and ligaments. You're less susceptible to injuries. It helps with range of motion, right? And as we get into older years, like there's so many other aspects. It helps with your metabolic rate so that you can increase the amount of calories that you expend on a day-to-day basis, which makes you less susceptible to fat gain as you age as well, because you have a stronger metabolism. Like there's all these other benefits that come from training, or like the real reason that we're doing it. And like the one that's the least benefit is like the amount of muscle that you gain, right? Because like we really don't gain a ton of muscle as naturals. Now, if you go get on like an unnatural substance, if you start taking unnatural levels of testosterone or get on any other style of steroid, like, yeah, you're probably going to get jacked pretty fast. And that's unfortunately, like that's what people see on social media, because 99% of the top influencers online, right? Like even if they're telling you that they're not taking something, like the vast majority of them are taking something, unless they're like 0.5% outlier of the entire population that can like is a hyper responder just at a natural level. But that's not the case for the vast majority.
For sure. As far as nutrition stuff goes, I want to ask you about this too, because I haven't necessarily like had conversations with a ton of people who have kind of I guess fallen for this, but the whole idea of like fruits and vegetables somehow having a negative effect on your body, you know what I'm saying? Like fruits make you fat because they have sugar in them, and vegetables are poisonous because they have like defense mechanisms and stuff that they release, you know, when you eat them and stuff. And anyways, I'm just like, I feel, I mean, it makes me happy that I haven't really had to have a conversation with anybody about that. But like, have you ever had to have have you ever had clients that have kind of fallen for that a little bit?
So the vegetable one is wild. Like that's just coming from like everybody's got an agenda online, right? And so they're going to try to portray like their persona or like the thing that they're pushing as the end all be all, and like what they're not. Like the people who are the most popular online typically or grow the fastest online are the most polarizing and saying the most outlandish things that draws attention, right? And like a big push online has been the carnivore diet in the last couple of years. And so there's a lot of like carnivore advocates out there trying to find any way to be like, vegetables are even bad. The only thing that you need is meat. And so like they'll cherry pick random studies that like don't give a full context with a meta-analysis that takes all the studies into review to like take and create like an actual answer from all of the context. They get like into the nitty gritty of one little study with like 10 to 20 subjects and like find any negative results that they can see from it or outcomes from it and blow those up without taking the context of all of the studies together and like what the relative like stance should be based on like the entire context, if that makes sense. So like you find that a lot right now, especially from like the carnivore community, which I haven't had to deal with that too much. On the fruit side of things, I absolutely have. I get people that come in all the time that like feel like they need to be avoiding fruit if they want to lose weight, just because, like you said, because it has sugar in it. There's sugar in fruit now, like, and I always come back like that's just not having, again, it's not coming back to the foundation of nutrition and how our body responds, right? Like I always come back with, well, you do realize that sugar is not what causes fat gain. And then people throw another fit, right? Like, oh, what are you talking about? Like sugar is poisonous. It's terrible for you. Like eat sugar and you're automatically going to store it as fat. But if we take that back again, look at a meta-analysis of studies and look at the full context, well, at the end of the day, what's going to cause fat gain or fat loss isn't the amount of sugar that's consumed. It comes down to the caloric intake that you're consuming, regardless of the amount of sugar that you have. There's a study done by, I think his name's Mark Hobb from, he's from some university. He's a professor at a university somewhere in the Midwest, but I can't remember, like it's Kansas or Kentucky or somewhere back there. But anyway, like he did a full-on study to where the only thing that he ate was Hostess. You know, Hostess, like the donuts. He ate only like Hostess products for like, I think it was like 3 months or something, which I don't advise that, but chuck full of sugar, right? That's all. So gross. Yeah, that's all that he consumed was Hostess products, like Twinkies and all that garbage for like a 3-month time frame. But he kept himself in a deficit of calories, right? So his body's burning 2,500 calories a day. He's eating 1,800 calories of only Hostess products every single day to fill his entire diet, and he lost like 20 pounds. So how is it that sugar is what causes or doesn't cause fat gain? At the end of the day, like, do we want to be mindful with the amount of sugar that we're consuming? Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely.
But at the same time, like if you want to include a little bit of sugar into your diet and enjoy, as long as it stays within your caloric intake, you're fine. Like the argument that I would have there, like you wouldn't want to consume the most of your diet from sugary foods. One, just because sugary foods are not usually as satisfying and usually leads to more cravings, right? So you're going to be hungrier, you're going to crave things more often, which is going to lead to you eating too many calories. It's not that the sugar is causing you to gain fat because you consumed it. It's like the after effects, the byproducts of consuming a lot of sugar in your diet that gets things off and out of whack that leads to weight gain in the long run. So yeah.
I was just going through I did a nutrition certification a while back with Lane Norton, and I was just going through it again recently, talking about
how was that? Did you enjoy that?
I did, man. I did. And if any of you, if you don't know who Lane Norton is, like you really should look him up, because he's definitely one of the leading voices, I would say, in like the science.
He's an OG too. He's been there a long time.
But yeah, when he talks about carbohydrate, like digestion and stuff, it's like the moment you put carbs in your mouth, he's like, he gives an example. He's like, you could take some pasta, just like plain pasta, put it in your mouth and start chewing it, and just keep chewing it like longer than you normally would. And he's like, you'll notice that it eventually turns into a sweet taste. And that's because your body is turning that into sucralose, which is sugar. Like it's a form of sugar, right? And so anyways, it's just funny because he's like, whether you like it or not, like your body needs sugar to survive, right? And function. Again,
function optimally.
Yes, function optimally. But again, it's like, obviously, no, you're not going to go and eat a bunch of Hostess. Like that's not kind of not what we're saying. It's like prioritize, whole foods and single ingredient foods and stuff. And you'll get what you need through a very balanced, diet. But again, guys, just like these extreme approaches that we see especially on social media of like, vegetables are bad, fruits make you fat, carnivore, whatever it may be. It's just like, I don't know, not to say those things won't work for you, because they probably
It
will.
does sometimes. Yeah, it absolutely can.
Yeah. And the bottom line is because it's, it's the amount of calories you're eating. It's not necessarily because, meat is, I mean, eating an all meat diet is magical or anything like that. Cause I mean, it's definitely not. It's just the amount of calories you're consuming on a daily basis. And so anyways, I appreciate you talking through that with me, Chaz, because the nutrition myths and stuff are just so blown out of proportion, especially when it comes to social media. And I feel lucky to have, had you as my mentor, and you kind of working with you kind of led me to these other people as well, like Lane Norton and a bunch of others that we could talk about. But I feel super grateful. Jordan Saya is another one that I just absolutely love listening to and talking, or listening to and hearing him talk about, what makes a person healthy versus all of these extreme approaches. And so, anyways, yeah, I appreciate it, man. I guess, Chaz, we're kind of coming to the end of the time. I joke all the time that I know nobody wants to listen to my voice for more than about 30 to 45 minutes. So we'll start wrapping it up. But maybe since it's your voice today, they'll listen a little bit longer. But I guess, Chaz, just like for somebody who's looking to start their journey, who's wanting to make a change, what would you recommend, or where would you encourage them to start on their health journey?
Yeah, that's a good question. And honestly, like, it comes down to the simpler at the beginning, the better, right? There's so much information that you can take in. And that's one of the hard parts about social media and kind of our dynamic where we're at, is that, like, whenever I get on calls and I'm chatting with people, they're like, I feel like I can take in all of this information. Like, the cool thing about today versus when I began, like, there wasn't a lot of information out there 10, 12, 13, 14 years ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, social media wasn't as big. So there wasn't a ton of information, which meant I didn't get a lot of good information, but I also didn't get a lot of bad information. Today, like, it's awesome that there's so much information out there, but it's also sucks that there's so much information out there, because a ton of it is contradicting. One person's telling you to do this, somebody's telling you to do the polar opposite of this. And so, like, you start consuming so much information, right? That, like, you just go into overload, and, like, it's paralysis by analysis. Like, you don't know where to begin, and, like, you just stay stuck, so you can't take action. So one of the things that I always try to get people to do is, like, on social media, you have to start blocking out the noise at some point if you want to find success, because you have to take one route and you can't keep deviating off path and, like, trying all these random things. And so, like, I always try to come back to, like, for people in that situation, go with what your gut tells you online, in regards to find like 1 to 2 people online that you really jive with, and, like, when you listen to them, they make sense. Like, they say things in a way that seem so understandable and so simple to, like, complex topics that digest with you very well.
Yeah.
Find 1 to 2 people like that you like, that you jive with, that just make good sense, and your gut tells you, like, what they're saying makes sense, right? And then everything else that you can get online and, like, start scrolling and look at that's differing opinions, either start unfollowing it or blocking it, and just stay in your lane of, like, those 1 to 2 people that you're trusting in as you get started, and just do the simple approaches of what they're suggesting, so that you're not always getting off track. Because that's what happens to the vast majority of people. They're taking way too much and trying something different every single week, and, like, just get caught up in this yo-yo. And so I would start there. Find 1 to 2 people that you jive with, that makes sense, that, like, your gut just instinctively trusts, and stick with their advice and get away from everything else. And, like, the advice should be very simple at first, especially if you're just beginning, like, getting into this process. You should be going for a walk 1 to 2 times a day for 10 to 20 minutes. If you can strength train 2 to 3 times per week at first, like, that's all you need. You don't need to start and be in the gym 7 times a week or going for these runs. Like, little walks, 2 to 3 30-minute strength sessions, like, trying to prioritize your protein intake at first, to get consistent with these very, very basic things. And then from there, once you're consistent there, you're going to start to see a little bit of a result. And if you're in a position where it's like, okay, I'm consistent with these very basic things, now I can add one more thing onto my plate, right? Maybe now I can start tracking my caloric intake, get that on point, and earn your right to level up. Don't add everything in at first. Keep it very simple with the basics. Get very good at it. Prove to yourself that you can do it over a 2 to 3 week time frame. Once you're consistent with it, and it's not like this huge stress to have to do it, and you've integrated it, then add one more thing on top of it. And that's how you're going to start to expedite your results and see faster results in the long term.
Love it, man. Building blocks, right?
Yeah,
it's not a dramatic change all overnight. It's going to take time. I mean, one of the things that I often tell people is like, how long have you been living the lifestyle you've been living? Like how long did it take you to build the body that you have now? And for a lot of, for most people, it's 5 to 10 years or more. And so to be realistic about the whole situation and the whole process, it's like, you're not going to change everything in a matter of months. It's going to take time. It's going to take years. So be patient with the process. I love that, man. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Guys, feel very fortunate to have had Chaz on the show today. So again, man, thank you so much for coming, sharing, who you are and all of your knowledge that you have gained over the past almost decade now of coaching and training individuals. Chaz, your social media, what is your social media, your Instagram handle?
Yeah, Instagram is just Chaz Spackman, at Chaz Spackman. I post over there quite a bit. Like my biggest social media platform is TikTok. Like that's where I spend the majority of my time, just because my following and reach there is much bigger. And that's just at Lost and Lifting. But those are the two places that you can go and see some of my content if you want to.
Yeah, because Chaz is definitely one of the guys that I would recommend, looking into, because I don't know. I feel like he is one that speaks truth and doesn't blow things out of proportion and stuff. So I think he would jive well with his content. So check it out, guys. But again, man, thank you so much. I don't know. I would love to have you on again at some point. So maybe that'll happen later on down the road.
I'd be happy to, man. Yeah, I'd be happy to.
Okay. All right, guys. Well, thanks for listening. Unlock your full potential by just small and simple steps like we talked about today. No need for drastic overnight changes. It's a lifelong process and a lifelong journey to build a sustainably healthy lifestyle. So thanks for listening, guys, and we'll talk to you later.